Yes. So the first topic is about the diode characteristics, basic structure and operating principle. Then current voltage characteristics. We also call that as IV characteristics or VI characteristics of a PN junction diode. And the other one is temperature dependence. So these are all the topics that we will be seeing now. Okay. So before going to that, just we will revise the topics that you have studied in the physics already. So that is the different types of materials. So you already know the materials are of three types. They are insulators, metals or conductors, then is semiconductors. So three types: insulators, conductors, then semiconductors. So what are these three types are, on what basis these three are divided or classified, just we'll see. So a very poor conductor of electricity is an insulator. Okay, what are the examples of those insulators? Wood, glass, diamond, mica, etc. And these insulators are classified based upon the forbidden energy gap and the resistivity. So these are all the parameters on which the materials are classified. So the most important parameters on which these materials are classified are forbidden gap, and the other one is forbidden gap, and the other one is resistivity. Okay, so what is forbidden gap? Actually, if you know the energy band diagrams of the materials, so energy band diagrams, if you see, there will be a conduction band. Okay, valency band, conduction band. So this is what we call it as valency band, represented by VB, and we will take here as energy states or energy states. Okay, then you will be having a conduction band here, conduction band. So this is energy band diagram where you are having a valency band, then you are having a conduction band. So this valency band is actually fully filled, completely filled or full. This is full, and conduction band is almost empty. Valency band is full with electrons, and the conduction band is empty, that does not have any electron. Okay, so and the gap between these two bands, valency band and conduction band, there is a gap, right? So this gap we call it as EG, which we call it as forbidden energy gap. Okay, so this gap is called forbidden energy gap. So if this gap is more, actually the current conduction in any material will take place due to the availability of electrons in the conduction band. If the electrons are there in the conduction band, then only the current will flow in the material. But what is that this diagram showing you? Valency band is having full of electrons, but conduction band is completely empty without having any electrons. So if the conduction band is having electrons, then only the conduction takes place in the materials. If the conduction band is empty without any electrons, then that material will not conduct any electricity. That means current will not flow in that material. Therefore, it is almost treated as an insulator. So why this conduction band is not having electrons? Because the conduction band is very far away from the valency band. The gap between the valency band and conduction band is very large, so that it requires large amount of energy for the electron to move or jump from valency band to the conduction band. Therefore, because that gap is more and the energy required is also more, that much energy we are unable to supply to that material. Therefore, there will not be any question of movement of electrons from valency band to conduction band. So the conduction band will be always empty, and this gap is more, approximately equal to 7 electron volts. And because of that, conduction is impossible in insulators, even by applying additional energy also. So that requires a lot of energy, but if you start applying small amount of energy also, that will not make the conduction to happen. That is one point. The other one is the resistivity of the material. Resistivity of the insulators is of the order of 10 to the power of 7 ohm meter. So because of this resistivity, high resistivity, it is not able to allow the flow of current. So resistivity is very high, and resistivity is high means conductivity is very less. The conductivity and resistivity are reciprocal to each other. Okay, so resistivity is high means conductivity is less. Conductivity is less, nothing but it will not conduct electricity. So that these are all the two important parameters on which the materials are classified. Okay. Similarly, coming to the metal, an excellent conductor is a metal. And what are those examples? Copper, aluminum, and all those things. In this case, there is no forbidden gap. Forbidden gap actually is zero, or both conduction band and valency band are overlapped. How we can draw that energy band diagram? The energy band diagram of that conductor is, suppose if you take this is energy states, and so this is your this is your say valency band. This is valency band. I will draw with shade like this. Okay, this valence band has got full of electrons anyhow, but conduction band is also is overlapped into the valency band. Okay, it is overlapped. Then I'll just show the filling in the other direction, so that this shows you that overlapping. So if overlapping, if these two is there, then what is the gap actually? Is there any gap between the both the bands, valence band and conduction band? This is conduction band, this is valence band, both are overlapped, and the gap is zero. So if the no forbidden gap actually existing, therefore all the electrons that are there in the valency band, they move into the conduction band. Conduction band and valency band is now completely filled with electrons. So therefore the conduction takes place. And the resistivity is very, very low. Resistivity is 10 to the power of -8. Whereas the resistivity of the insulator is 10 to the power of 7. This is 10 to the power of -8. Very, very low resistivity means high conductivity. Low resistivity means the conductivity is high. High conductivity here. Okay, both are conductivity and resistivity reciprocal to each other. Whereas in this case, it is high resistivity, and thereby low conductivity. Okay, so conductivity is low means no current passing through the material. Conductivity is high means current will be flowing through the material. So that is about the metals. Now coming to the semiconductors. So a material whose conductivity lies between that of conductors and insulators is called semiconductor. That means the resistivity and conductivity both will be in between that of conductors and insulators. Those things we call them as a semiconductors. Now, what are the examples of semiconductors? Are germanium and silicon. And what about the forbidden gap? Forbidden gap is very small, approximately 1 electron volt. What was the forbidden gap of the insulator? 7 electron volts. What is the forbidden gap of conductor? 0. So the forbidden gap also is in between that of insulators and metals. So 1 electron volts approximately. The resistivity is also, it is 10 to the power of -8 for metals, 10 to the power of 7 is for insulators, but this is resistivity is lies between both of them. 10 to the power of -4 is there. Okay, so the conductivity of the semiconductor depends upon the temperature. Another thing is the semiconductor, the conductivity lies between that of conductor and insulator, and that conductivity depends on the temperature. Very, very important point. The conductivity depends on the temperature. So if the conductivity is depending on the temperature, then how that the energy gap varies is, there is a experimental formula for it actually at 0 Kelvin. If you see at 0 Kelvin, so the energy gap for germanium and silicon will be, okay, for germanium and silicon, the energy gap, we represent that forbidden energy gap as Eg. At 0 Kelvin, I represent that as Eg of 0. The temperature is 0. So Eg of 0 is approximately 0.785 electron volts for germanium and 1.21 electron volts for silicon. So these are at 0 Kelvin. So, and this at 0 Kelvin, the values of these 0.785 electron volts or 1.21 electron volts, these are also little high. But as you increase the temperature, these energy gap still decreases. That means as you increase the temperature, the conductivity of the semiconductor material also increases and the resistivity decreases. So the forbidden gap in Eg depends on the temperature, and it decreases by an amount 2.23 into 10 to the power of -4 T for germanium, and for silicon it decreases by 3.6 into 10 to the power of -4 T. That means at 0 Kelvin it is 0.785 and 1.21. But as the temperature increases, this energy gap keeps decreasing. That's why we have kept here minus. By what amount it is decreasing means 2.23 into 10 to the power minus 4 times the temperature, and 3.6 into 10 to the power minus 4 times the temperature for silicon. So these are all the formulae for germanium and silicon. And if you substitute at temperature, room temperature is what? Actually 27 degrees centigrade is the room temperature, but generally degree centigrade we convert it into Kelvin. If I want to convert it into Kelvin, what I have to do? You have to add 273 to that. So 27 plus 273 will be 300 Kelvin. So at 300 Kelvin, if you substitute T is equal to 300, 2.23 into 10 to the power minus 4 into 300, if you subtract from 0.785, then at 300 Kelvin, you will get it as Eg is 0.72 electron volts. Similarly, the silicon, if you subtract 3.6 into 10 to the power minus 4 into 300 from 1.21, then you will be getting the silicon energy gap is 1.1 electron volts. That means at 0 Kelvin, the values are 0.785 electron volts for germanium, 1.21 electron volts for silicon. And as the temperature increases, what happens? If the temperature increases, what happens? The energy gap decreases. Decreases nothing but the conductivity keeps on increasing. That means almost at 0 Kelvin, the energy gap is more. As the temperature increases, the energy gap decreases. Gap is more, nothing but what? It acts like a insulator. It will not conduct. Gap is more means it acts like an insulator. Gap keeps reducing means the conductivity keeps increasing, means it is almost converting to a conductor form. So at 0 Kelvin, almost the semiconductor material will act like an insulator. Then as you increase the temperature at room temperature and beyond, then the energy gap keeps decreasing, then it starts conducting. So that it acts, the temperature increases, the semiconductor will conduct effectively. So that is what is the concept of temperature dependence of the conductivity of the semiconductor material. Okay, so you can just take one problem like calculate the forbidden energy gap for silicon and germanium at a temperature of 35 degrees centigrade, say. So 30, now I have calculated this at 27 degrees centigrade, right? 27 degrees centigrade, nothing but what? How would you convert that to Kelvin? T is equal to 27 plus 273. That's what you got it as 300. Now if the temperature T is equal to 35 degrees centigrade, 35, then what is the temperature in Kelvin? 35 plus 273. 35 plus 273 is how much? T is equal to 35 plus 273 is how much? 308 Kelvin. Now at T is equal to 308 Kelvin, just what is the Eg of germanium? For germanium, how much? And for silicon is how much? You just calculate and just type in the chat box. Use the formula 0.78. Calculator is also very much. You have to keep it with your calculator, notebook, and pen. Now I have given you one problem. The formulas are available on the screen. Temperature is 35 degrees centigrade. I have already converted that to Kelvin. The Kelvin is just you have to add 273 degrees. 35 plus 273 is equal to 308 Kelvin. Then if you substitute for germanium, say 0.785 minus 2.23 into 10 to the power minus 4 T. T is nothing but you substitute there 308. 308 into 2.23 into 10 to the power minus 4. You just subtract that from 0.785 and tell me how much is the Eg for germanium. Similarly, Eg for silicon. Just type that in the chat box. The answer for this. I think you have understood the question. You can just calculate using that formula. Come and do that. For germanium and silicon, just write down germanium is how much, silicon is how much in the chat box. I'm not receiving any answers. Otherwise, I'll call by number. Just type the calculator and type it. What's the 0.785 minus 2.23 into 10 to the power of minus 4 into 308. Yes, an answer has come. What is that for germanium? Is it for germanium? Yeah. Germanium, how much you got? Point 7163. What is that you have given? 0.716, 479. 0.7132 for germanium, 491. 482 is for silicon, 1.145. Just again verify, just check that. Formula is available. Just T is equal to 308. You have to substitute. See, for 0 Kelvin is how much? 0.785. For 300 Kelvin is how much? 0.72. It has decreased. I am telling that as temperature increases, it should decrease. 0 Kelvin is 0.785. 300 Kelvin is 0.72. Then how will be 308? It should be less than 0.72, right? Because as temperature increases, the energy gap decreases, because there is a subtraction is there, minus in between 0.785 minus something. So as temperature increases, it should be less than what we calculated it for 300 Kelvin. For germanium, it should be 0.72, and below that, for silicon, it should be less than 1.1. It should be less than 1.1. It should not be greater than 1.1. Okay. Exactly correct. 479. 1.7163 electron volts is correct. Point 1.09912. Exactly correct. 480, 468, 479, 482 is correct. 481. Okay, everyone is correct. So very good. So that means as temperature increases, the energy gap decreases. At 0 Kelvin, it will be maximum for semiconductor, and at 0 Kelvin, it acts like a insulator. As temperature increases at room temperature and beyond, it acts like a semiconductor. Okay. The conductivity increases as the temperature increases. So that's all. That is all about this one. I think you all understood. The formula is very, very important. You can remember, but it's not an examination point of view. It is not important. It's just a prerequisite basics. Then next, types of semiconductors. You have got different types of semiconductor materials. They are classified into intrinsic semiconductors, extrinsic semiconductors. Intrinsic semiconductor is called as pure form. Extrinsic semiconductor is called as doped semiconductor or impure form. It is also called as impure form. In intrinsic semiconductor, what happens is number of holes is equal to number of electrons. In intrinsic semiconductor material, number of holes is equal to number of electrons. But whereas in case of extrinsic semiconductors, again there are two types. One is N type and P type, depending upon the doping. The process of adding small amount of impurities to the pure form of semiconductor in order to increase the conductivity of the semiconductor is known as doping. Doping is nothing but adding impurities. Adding what type of impurities? We may add whether it can be acceptor impurities or donor impurities, so that it forms either N type or P type. Suppose if you want N type, what type of impurities that we have to add? Those impurities, if you want to have an N type, then we have to add what type of impurities? Pentavalent. Pentavalent impurities are nothing but what? Those are arsenic, antimony. Next one is what? Phosphorus, then bismuth, and so on. So if you add pentavalent impurities such as arsenic, antimony, phosphorus, bismuth, etc. to the intrinsic semiconductor or pure form of semiconductor, then an N-type semiconductor is formed. Okay, an N-type semiconductor is formed. So pentavalent impurities nothing but how many electrons it will be having? Pentavalent nothing but what? 5 electrons. 5 in its valency band will be there. These are also called as donors or donor impurities. Okay, donor impurities. Whereas if you want P-type semiconductor material, then what type of impurities that you have to add? Add trivalent. Trivalent means how many valency electrons will be there? 3 in number. So these are called as acceptor impurities. And what are those trivalent atoms? They are boron, aluminium, indium, gallium, and so on. So these are the trivalent impurities. If you add these trivalent impurities, which is also called as acceptor impurities, then a p-type semiconductor material is formed. P-type semiconductor, n-type semiconductor, by the name itself shows that n-type semiconductor means the number of electrons are more than the number of holes. So in n-type, number of electrons are more than the number of holes, whereas in p-type, number of holes are greater than the number of electrons. So p-type means more holes are there, n-type means more electrons are there. So that's why they are n-type and p-type semiconductors. So n-type will get if you add donor impurities. Donor means excess electrons should be there. So pentavalent impurity has got an excess electron. That excess electron will be added to a semiconductor. Semiconductor materials are nothing but whose valence electrons in the outermost shell will be only 4 in number. So semiconductors are those materials whose valence electrons in its outermost shell are 4 in number, whereas pentavalent will be having 5 in number, so that 5 will be given it to the semiconductor metal, so that excess electrons will be formed, free electrons will be formed. And trivalent atoms will be having 3 in number, so it will accept one more and there creates a hole in the semiconductor material, which we call it as a p-type. So holes are more in number in p-type, electrons are more in number in n-type. So that is all about the types of semiconductors, which you already know. Now actually making use of this n-type and p-type, you know the properties of n-type and properties of p-type, how n-type are formed, how p-types are formed, and what will be the count of electrons and holes in n-type and p-type. Knowing this, now we will construct using this n-type and p-type semiconductor materials a new electronic device, which we call it as a p-n junction diode. So when these two types of semiconductor materials, p-type and n-type, both of them are brought in contact with each other. So both are there separately, p-type and n-type. This is say p-type. This is say n-type. So two materials are there, p-type and n-type. This is p-type, this is n-type. In p-type, what will be there? Holes are more in number, holes. Okay. Electrons are very less in number. Electrons are represented with dots. Holes are represented with small circles or bubbles. P-type semiconductor material, holes are large in number, electrons are less in number. We can just see the count difference here. And electrons in the n-type semiconductor material are more in number, electrons are more in number, whereas holes are less in number. Okay, holes are less in number. So these two materials are there. So what I have to do now, these two materials should be brought in contact with each other. You have to just join them together. If you join them together, what happens? It will become like this. This is p-type, this is n-type. Then these all are having holes in it. Less number of electrons are there. These are having electrons in it, and less number of holes are there. So we brought both of them together. When both of them together we got this point where it is for joining both the materials. This we call it as junction. Okay. The junction is nothing but the point of contact between two types of semiconductor materials, p-type and n-type. So the electronic device which permits the flow of electron in one direction is called as a p-n junction diode. Now the construction of diode is like this. Now p-type semiconductor material and n-type semiconductor material, both you have taken, and both of them you brought in contact with each other, so that a junction is forming. So that junction we call it as a p-n junction diode. So the name diode, it has come because it has got two electrodes. Diode means di means two, ode means electrodes. Two electrodes are there, nothing but what? One is p side, the other one is n side. P side we call it as P is related to positive, or holes or majority charge carriers. So this p side we call it as anode. Okay, and n side we call it as cathode. And these two, anode and cathode, are called electrodes. And there are two electrodes are there which are brought in contact with each other. Therefore, it is named as diode. The name of the diode has come like this. Di stands for two. Ode stands for two electrodes. One is anode, the other one is cathode. Anode is nothing but p-type semiconductor material. Cathode is nothing but n-type semiconductor material. Anode is positive. cathode is negative. Both of them brought in contact with each other, so that there forms a point of contact in between these two types of semiconductor materials, which we call that as a junction. And this junction is between p-type and n-type semiconductor materials. That's why it is called p-n junction. And it is called as diode because this is connecting two electrodes. One is anode on p side, the other one is cathode on n side. Therefore, it is called as diode. So the name of this one is p-n junction diode. So p-type and n-type semiconductor materials are forming a junction, and the junction is between two types of electrodes, anode and cathode. That's why the name p-n junction diode. That is the formation of the p-n junction diode. Now, once this has formed like this, so electronic device which permits the, what happens here, once these two are brought in contact with each other, there takes place diffusion. You know the concept of diffusion, very, very important. What is meant by diffusion? Diffusion is nothing but flow of charge carriers. Flow of charge carriers, okay, uh, from high concentration to low concentration. Okay, from high concentration to low concentration. It is almost like water. If you have a slope, water will flow from always a higher level to the lower level. Here also, in one region there are more in number. The charge carriers are more in number. Maybe in other region they are less in number. Always what happens? The charge carriers which are at high concentration, they are always have a tendency to move from high concentration to the low concentration. Now you can see in this p-n junction diode, p side there are more holes are there, n side there are less holes are there. Then now what is the behavior of the holes on p side? Always they try to move from p side to n side. So this hole is moving from p side to n side. Okay, holes will move from p side to n side, and electrons are more in number on n side, and electrons are less in number on p side. Therefore, due to the mechanism called diffusion, diffusion will allow these electrons which are more in number on n side to move from n side to the p side. So electrons will move from n side to the p side. Okay, so I'm just representing that with arrows. Holes are moving from p side to the n side. Electrons are moving from n side to the p side. And when it happens, when immediately this p side, p type and n type both are brought in contact with each other, immediately this happens, diffusion takes place, because that has got tendency for the charge carriers to move always from higher concentration to lower concentration. So the charge carriers which are very close to the junction, immediately moves from p side to the n side. Holes move from p side to n side, and electrons will move from n side to p side, which are very close to the junction. Now, when these are moving from n side to p side and p side to n side, these electrons and holes, they combine. The electron hole will combine with an electron, and electron will combine with a hole, and they disappear. And there creates an immobile charged ions. Okay, they are disappearing, nothing but what? Mobile carriers are disappearing by recombination, but the charge that is created there will be existing. So that means the mobile carriers are disappearing, but the charge possessed by them in that place will be retaining. So that we call it as immobile. Immobile means which will not move. The charge will not move. The carrier is moving, the charge will not move. So the carriers move and they recombine. After recombination, there creates an immobile charged ions. So suppose if hole is moving from p side to n side, then what happens? So if the hole is moving from p side to n side, then it hole is recombining with the electron. So this hole is recombining with the electron. Therefore, a positive charge will be created on the n side. After recombining, hole is coming from p side to n side. N side, what happens? The hole is disappearing, but that hole is retaining its charge in the form of an immobile charged ion. Therefore, that is represented as a positive on the n side. Now, from n side, what is happening? Electron is moving from n side to p side, and when electron is moving from n side to p side and recombined with the hole there, it is retaining its charge, negative charge on the P side. So I represent the negative charge on the P side. So this is what is happening immediately when you bring both in contact with each other. Okay. So the figure now it has converted like this. The one which are closer to the junction only they move. Now by the time these immobile charged ions they form, what happens actually? Now the hole actually which is far away from the junction. This is what is junction, right? The middle one is junction. On either side of the junctions, immobile charged negative ions and positive ions are created because those all recombined nearby the junction. Now the holes which are far away, this hole, the holes which are far away are the electrons which are far away from the junction. Now they cannot move because already a barrier has formed. Therefore, they cannot move. Only the one which are close to the junction will recombine. The one after recombination, the immobile charged ions are there. That creates a barrier. Barrier is nothing but what? It's like a disconnecting kind of region. Which will not allow these holes and electrons to recombine after passing through this barrier. So now this electron, this hole on P side, this hole on P side cannot move. This electron on the N side cannot move because there is a barrier existing. There is a gap existing. The gap is because of the immobile charged ions. That immobile charged ions are due to the mobile carriers which have been recombined nearby the junction. So after the recombination takes place nearby the junction, there creates a gap or depletion region. That depletion region will not allow the far away carriers from the junction to recombine. So that will be the next state of the diode. So immediately if you bring contact with each other, then it happens like this and it stops. So that means some potential is created across the junction. So with the polarities, negative on the P side, positive on the N side. This is P side, this is N side. Negative on the P side and positive on the N side, and that we call it as barrier potential. That barrier potential, the barrier that is created across the junction, immediately once you bring both in contact with each other, immediately happens. It happens within no time, within just within short time. It happens like that, and after that there will not be any movement of the charge carriers further, and there creates a potential barrier called VB. Okay, and this region, this width, we call it as the depletion width, depletion region width represented by W. Okay, and that region we call it as depletion region. That depletion region and the voltage across the depletion region we call it as a barrier potential, and that barrier potential is having a negative on P side and positive on N side, and this barrier potential or depletion region, this depletion region contains what? It contains immobile ions, immobile negative ions on P side, immobile positive ions on N side. If I'm putting minus with circle, plus with circle, that is a charge that does not move, immobile. But if I'm representing a circle or dot in the rest of the regions, those are called carriers, mobile carriers. They move, they keep moving. They move. If you apply the external potential or electric field, they move. But after movement, if they recombine, then they created a potential barrier that we call it as immobile ions. Minus and plus represents immobile ions. So what does actually the depletion region consists of means? What you say? Depletion region consists of immobile negative and positive ions. Immobile negative and positive ions. That is because of what? Because of the recombination of holes with electrons or electrons with holes across the junction. It has happened. So that is called as depletion region, or that develops a potential across that, which we call it as barrier potential, represented by VB, capital V suffix capital B, with the polarity of negative sign on the P side and positive side on the N side. So this is what happens when you bring in contact with each other two different types of semiconductor materials, P type and N type. P type has got more number of holes and N type has got more number of electrons. When both are brought in contact with each other, holes move from P side to N side, electrons move from N side to P side nearby the junction, and they recombine and converted into immobile ions. Once they are converted into immobile ions, that region forms which we call it as depletion region, and that does not allow the rest of the holes and electrons to cross this. Therefore, it stops diffusion mechanism. That means diffusion takes place only across the junction, nearby the junction. After that, it stops. Diffusion stops. Diffusion is nothing but what? Movement of carriers. Movement of carriers will take place only nearby the junction. Okay. Now I will give you just one real time one analogy. This is not related to the subject. For example, two kingdoms are there. Two kingdoms are there. There is a war between the two kingdoms. What they will do actually, if there is a war, they declared a war between the two kingdoms. All the soldiers from the both the kingdoms, they will gather in a very wide area. Okay, we call that as an open place, is a ground. So they all come out of their kingdom and they will choose a common place where they would like to fight. And once any one of them is defeated, the others will be occupying their kingdom. Okay, so it is also like there is a place where from both sides the soldiers are coming. So that means some thousands of soldiers are on one side, another thousands of soldiers on the other side. Then they both of them, what they will do, they come closer to each other, right? When the war starts about to start, they all come together. So it's almost like a junction here. You have to correlate this analogous example with the PN junction here. So what happens, all the soldiers are coming towards each other to start the war. So when all the people are coming to each other, once they first row, they always they will be standing in rows, right? First row, some people will be the second row, third row. That means all the soldiers are scattered like that. They will be standing in order. So first row, second row, third row. They will be keep running from one side, the other side also the other people will be running. First, what happens? The one who are in the very first row from both the sides, they collide with each other. They collide with each other. So the one who are in the second row from either side, they will again come next. So what happens in the at the junction? At the junction, either side of the soldiers may be dying. Okay, they may be killed by others. So that means what, when they kill the others, they will no longer be able to move because they are dead bodies. They keep falling on the ground. They fall on the ground and they will become immobile. Okay, earlier they used to be mobile. They are running, but once they collide, and if one among them or both of them may die, they fall on the ground. Once they fall on the ground, they are dead bodies. They no longer move. Okay. So now what happens? At the junction it is more concentration. At the junction it is more concentration, but the one who is at the last row, their turn will come only if this last row and that last rows or some others will be coming and colliding. But they are little safe away from the junction, away from the actual contact point. So once suppose these people are over, they died at the junction. Then suppose if the king himself is there in the first row or somewhere, if the king himself is being killed by the opponents, then what happens? They declare that they have won that war and they will be occupying the kingdom. Then what happens? The ones who are in the last row will be safe. They will not participate in the war because already king has been killed by the opponent. Therefore, they will reach their home safely. That means they are not participating in the process of diffusion. They will be safe. So here also, the one who are more close to the junction are affected, and they will become immobile. And the one who are far away from the junction, they are safe. They will not participate even in the process. So here also is the same thing. So as you bring both these p-type and n-type semiconductor materials in contact with each other, the electrons and holes which are close to the junction will collide with each other and they will become immobile, and that creates a gap actually, which we call this depletion layer, and that will allow depletion layer does not allow the rest of the holes and electrons to collide or to diffuse. Therefore, it stops the process there itself, and there creates a depletion region with the width of W, and there creates a potential barrier with minus VB or minus on P side, plus on N side. with a potential of VB. Okay, that is what is the formation of PN junction diode. And P side we call it as anode, N side we call it as a cathode. And the symbol of this diode is represented like this symbol with arrow and a bar. This bar is actually conventional flow of that current. Then generally the flow of current is depending on what flow of holes are opposite to the flow of electrons. So what happens here? PN junction diode holes are moving from which side to which side? Holes are moving from P side to N side. Electrons are moving from N side to P side. Therefore, the direction of the current is always from P side to the N side. So that's why the arrow is showing from anode to the cathode. That is what is the symbol of the diode. Then the P-type and N-type regions are referred to as anode and cathode. P side is anode, N side is cathode. The arrow shows that the conventional current flow, that is flow of holes from anode to the cathode, that is P side to the N side. When the diode is forward biased, the arrowhead shows the conventional direction of the current flow, that is the direction in which the holes flow takes place, or opposite to the flow of the electrons. That is all about the PN junction diode formation. Formation of the depletion region. Depletion region contains what? Immobile ions, positive and negative ions, and across the depletion region, because of immobile positive and negative ions, there creates a potential called barrier potential. Okay, so that is what all happens when you don't apply any bias. No applied bias. I have not applied any bias here. That time it happens like this. You can see this diagram where there are negative charge is there on P side, positive charge is there on the N side. That is forming a depletion region. And that is also called as barrier potential. And the current will be zero. Current does not flow because there is a barrier existing. Current does not flow, and I am not applying any voltage across that. Therefore, current is zero. That is the thing. At the instant two materials are joined, the electrons and holes will combine, resulting in the lack of free carriers in the region. This region of uncovered positive and negative ions is called the depletion region due to the depletion of the free carriers in the region. In the absence of applied bias across the semiconductor diode, the current in the diode is zero, or the net flow of charge in the current in the diode is zero. So current will not flow because the carriers are not moving right across the junction. Junction has got no depletion region. The carriers are not moving. I am not applying any external voltage. Therefore, under no bias condition, current is zero, depletion region exists, and there will not be any movement of charge carriers. These are all the important points. Next, when we apply forward bias, what happens? Forward biasing nothing but what? I want to overcome this barrier across the junction. For that, I will be applying positive terminal of the battery. What is meant by forward bias? Positive terminal of the battery is connected to the P type, and negative terminal of the battery is connected to the N type. Then that type of bias is said to be forward bias. Very, very important. When positive terminal of the battery is connected to P type, P to P, positive to P type, negative to N type, N to N, negative to N type, then we call it as a forward bias. When we apply forward bias, what happens? Already there exists a depletion region. Now what I am doing is I am pushing these holes and electrons towards the center, so that what happens? The depletion region becomes zero, and there does not exist any barrier potential. That barrier potential also will become zero, and the carriers cross across the junction. Therefore, current will be flowing across the junction. That current we call it as forward current. And to overcome that barrier potential which was already created, how much extra voltage that I have to apply across the junction? Cut-in voltage. We call that as a cut-in voltage, or it is also called as knee voltage. Knee voltage, that is 0.3 volts. 0.3 volts for germanium, 0.7 volts for silicon. So if you apply the external voltage for 0.3 and above, then that barrier becomes zero, depletion width will become zero, and the carriers easily flow across the junction from either side, holes from P side to N side, electrons from N side to P side, and the current starts flowing. So that is represented by the current ID. ID starts flowing. And the cut-in voltage or knee voltage for germanium is 0.3 volts. For silicon, it is 0.7 volts. How much is this 0.3, 0.7? Nothing but it is the voltage across the junction, which is called as barrier potential. To overcome the barrier potential, if you apply the voltage across the diode, that voltage we call it as a cut-in voltage or knee voltage. That voltage if you apply, and beyond that only the current starts flowing. Up to that, the current does not flow. Okay, so the applied forward voltage is say Vf, the barrier potential is say Vb. How much is the barrier potential already created? So for example, for silicon diode, already it is there 0.7 volts is there. Now you are applying forward voltage as say 0.0. Will the current flow? If you apply forward voltage is 0, 0 nothing but what? It's open circuit. Current is 0. Current is 0. If you apply forward voltage is 0, current is 0, though the barrier potential is 0.7. Now voltage if you increase from 0 to 0.1, what happens? This 0.1 will cancel the barrier potential across the junction by 0.1 volts. So this 0.1 and that 0.1 cancels. How much will be the barrier potential that will be existing? 0.6 volts. Now that means if you keep on increasing the forward voltage, the barrier potential keep on decreasing. Now if you increase to 0.2 volts, then it decreases from 0.6 to 0.5 volts. If you increase to 0.3 volts forward voltage, then the barrier potential decreases from 0.5 to, it is cancelling. Whatever the amount of forward voltage you are applying, that is cancelling the barrier potential already created across the junction. So that's why I keep on increasing this forward voltage. My barrier potential is keep on decreasing. 0.4 if you keep, this will become 0.3. 0.3 if you keep this, 0.5 if you make this 0.5, then what happens? 0.5 if you keep, this will become 0.2. 0.6 if you make, it will become 0.1. 0.7 if you make, then it will become 0. That means if your applied forward voltage is 0.7 and beyond, then only your barrier potential will become 0, nullified, then starts flowing. For all these things, current will be 0 only. Now when the forward voltage is greater than or equal to 0.7, then current starts flowing, current increases. So in the forward biased PN junction diode, what happens is, if you keep on increasing the forward voltage from 0 onwards, up to 0.7 volts, the current will be 0 only, because in this 0.7 volts, if you keep on increasing, it is cancelling the barrier potential already created due to diffusion. Now when 0.7 and it reaches beyond that, then the barrier potential completely becomes 0, depletion region width becomes 0, then the current starts flowing. Then that's what we call it as forward current. That current is flowing in the direction from anode to cathode. That's why the direction of the current, if you see, it is in the clockwise direction. ID is represented in the circuit. Okay, so the minimum voltage required to be applied at the forward voltage is called knee voltage or cut-in voltage, for which the current starts flowing. That knee voltage and cut-in voltage for germanium is 0.3 volts. For silicon, it is 0.7 volts. Okay, so now when the current is flowing, because of what? Because of the majority charge carriers. What are the majority charge carriers in the p-type and n-type? P-type are holes, n-type are electrons. So this current is due to majority charge carriers. If the current is due to majority charge carriers, the magnitude of the current is also large, and it is measured in terms of milliamperes. The current is due to ID is due to majority charge carriers, and majority charge carriers are large in number. Therefore, the amount of current that is flowing will be measured in terms of milliamperes. Okay, so the current is due to majority charge carriers and it is measured in milliamperes. That is very, very important. So this is all about forward bias. Forward biasing nothing but p-type is connected to positive terminal, n-type is connected to negative terminal. If you do like that and keep on increasing the forward voltage up to 0.7 volts, the current is 0 and it cancels the barrier potential, or it nullifies the barrier potential, or it overcomes the barrier potential. And after 0.7 volts for silicon diode, the current starts conducting, and that current is due to majority charge carriers crossing the junction. That majority charge carriers are holes in p-type, electrons in n-type, and that majority charge carriers are large in number. Therefore, the current magnitude in forward biased condition is milliamperes. Okay, that is all about forward bias. And the width of the depletion region is 0, barrier potential is 0, applied potential will be greater than 0.7 volts, and the current is due to majority charge carriers. Current magnitude is milliamperes, and the cut-in voltages are 0.3 for germanium, 0.7 for silicon. These are all the important points related to forward bias. Next, come to reverse bias. Reverse bias, when the positive terminal of the battery is connected to the N type opposite. Now positive to N type, negative to P type, P to N, N to P. Okay, so then we call that as a reverse bias connection. Now reverse bias, what happens? Forward bias, what happens? These polarities of the batteries will push the charge carriers towards the junction. Okay, push the charge carriers towards the junction in forward bias. In reverse bias, what happens? The polarities of the batteries will pull the charge carriers. Holes will be depleted away from P side to the negative terminal of the battery, and electrons in the N side are depleted away from N side to the positive terminal of the battery. That means now what is happening here? The depletion region width keeps increasing, and the barrier potential also keeps increasing. Now what happens? If that is keep on increasing, the majority charge carriers are not crossing the junction, they are actually coming away from the junction, majority charge carriers. In the forward bias condition, what happens? Majority charge carriers are going towards the junction and crossing the junction also. But in this case, majority charge carriers are coming away from the junction and minority charge carriers are actually crossing the junction. But minority charge carriers are very less in number. So minority charge carriers are also, they are constant in number. They does not keep on increasing. They are just constant. They only depend on temperature. If the temperature increases, then only minority charge carriers count increases. So minority carriers are less in number and they are constant in number. Therefore, the minority charge carriers are crossing the junction. Majority charge carriers are depleted away from the junction. The minority charge carrier current is flowing across the junction in the opposite direction. Therefore, the direction of the current is in the anti-clockwise direction. The direction of the current is from cathode to the anode. That's why the direction of the current is shown in the opposite direction. And that too, the current is due to minority charge carriers. Here I is nothing but I is nothing but minority charge carrier current. Minority charge carriers are constant in number and are dependent on temperature. Therefore, this is also called as saturation current, represented by I naught or IS. So this we call it as reverse saturation current. So reverse saturation current means the reverse current, actually it is reverse current, forward current, like that. But reverse saturation current is called because the charge carriers are saturated. They are not increasing unless until the temperature increases. The minority charge carriers count will be fixed. So minority charge carrier count is fixed and are saturated. Therefore, we call that as a reverse saturation current, and that flows in the opposite direction from cathode to anode, that is N side to P side. That's why it is called reverse current, and it is due to minority charge carriers, and minority charge carriers number is fixed. Therefore, it is called reverse saturation current, represented by either I naught or IS. Okay, and these charge carriers are very small in number. Therefore, the magnitude of that current will be microamperes or nanoamperes. Very, very important. So the magnitude of the reverse current is very, very small. The magnitude of the forward current is large. It is almost like the current is flowing in the forward bias. Current is almost zero in the reverse bias. Ideally, forward bias it conducts. Reverse bias it does not conduct. Ideally, the current is zero in reverse bias, large in forward bias. That's why with the behavior of this reverse biased and forward biased conditions, in forward bias, the diode acts like an on switch where current will be flowing. In the reverse bias, the diode acts like an off switch where current is almost zero. Okay, so that is what is the application derived from the operations of forward bias and reverse bias. Forward bias acts like a on switch. Reverse bias acts like a off switch. Or forward bias, the resistance is very, very small across the junction. Resistance is very small. Therefore, more amount of current is flowing. In the reverse bias, resistance is very high. Therefore, current is very, very small. So resistance is infinity ideally in case of reverse bias. Resistance of the diode is zero in case of forward bias. Resistance is zero means on switch. Resistance is infinity means off switch. On switch means short circuit. Off switch means open circuit. So reverse bias means open circuit. Forward bias means closed circuit or short circuit. Okay, that is all about the operation under no bias. Three things we have seen, 3 slides. No applied bias. When no applied bias is there, current is zero. There exists a potential barrier or depletion region, due to diffusion across the junction, and there creates a potential barrier. And when you apply forward bias, the barrier completely gets overcome or nullified or cancelled, and the charge carriers cross the junction in large number. The current is equal to majority charge carrier current, and it is expressed in milliampere. And when it is coming to reverse bias, the depletion region width widens, barrier potential also increases, therefore majority charge carriers cannot cross, minority charge carriers cross the junction. Minority charge carriers are very, very small in number, that is almost equal to zero current or very small current of the order of microamperes or nanoamperes, and that reverse current is also called as reverse saturation current, denoted by I naught and IS. Okay, this is all about diode operation. Under no bias, it is also called as unbiased. Another one are zero biased. Another one is forward bias. Another one is reverse bias. Depends upon the polarities of the battery. Next, whatever the current that is flowing in the diode, okay, is represented by an equation called diode current equation. Very, very, very important diode current equation. I is equal to I naught into e power of V by eta Vt minus 1, where I is called diode current, I naught is called diode reverse saturation current, and V is called external voltage that is applied across the diode, external voltage or bias voltage. And eta is a constant, empirical constant actually it is. It is 1 for germanium and 2 for silicon. Its value of eta 1 for germanium and 2 for silicon. And Vt is nothing but thermal voltage or temperature equivalent of voltage. Okay, thermal voltage or temperature equivalent of voltage. That is equal to actually Vt is kT by Q. K is nothing but Boltzmann constant. T is nothing but temperature in Kelvin, and Q is nothing but charge of an electron. Q is nothing but charge of an electron. And this is equal to, if you substitute, what is the K value actually? K is Boltzmann constant 1.38 into 10 to the power of minus 23 joule per Kelvin. That is the value of the Boltzmann constant in joule per Kelvin. You have to remember that 1.38 into 10 to the power minus 23 joule per Kelvin. And charge of an electron is 1.66 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. Okay. Temperature, if you take it room temperature, it will be 27 degrees. And if you want to convert it into Kelvin, temperature in Kelvin is equal to 273 plus temperature in degree centigrade. Okay. So that if you substitute. Now T, okay, T whatever it may be, that we will take. K and Q are fixed, right? Now if you substitute K value as 1.38 into 10 to the power minus 23 and Q value as 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19, and if you just simplify, this is equal to T by 11,600. Because K and Q values are already fixed, every time substituting K value, Q value and doing all those things is not required. Just you substitute it now and calculate, it will be T by 11,600. Now onwards, when you want to calculate Vt, directly use T by 11,600, because already K and Q are substituted and converted to get the formula T by 11,600. So T by 11,000, now temperature keeps changing. Temperature at room temperature at 35 degrees, 45 degrees, whatever it may be, you can calculate what is Vt. And you can use this germanium diode or silicon diode. Germanium means 1, silicon is 2, and use all those things in this formula. I is equal to I naught into e power of V by eta Vt minus 1. V is the applied voltage across the diode. I is the current that is flowing. I naught is the reverse saturation current that is flowing. Vt is the thermal voltage or temperature equivalent of the voltage. And this is the equation that is governing the diode current that is flowing across the junction in the reverse bias or forward bias. Okay. So this is very, very important formula, particularly in examination point of view, both internal as well as external. And this current equation is also called as Shockley. Shockley equation is also, this is also named as Shockley equation. Okay. Shockley equation. So this is the general characteristics of a semiconductor defined by this equation, referred to as Shockley equation. For the forward and reverse bias regions, it is valid for both the region, forward bias and reverse bias. But only thing is, forward bias means V is positive, reverse bias means V will be negative. All others will be same. So this is what is about the diode current equation. Very, very important. Make a note of this slide. I hope you are making notes. Otherwise, anyhow, we'll be sharing the handout also. But you just keep listening seriously and put concentration on these very, very important topics. Next, VI characteristics. Now, already we have seen the operation of the PN junction diode. So, what does that operation says in the forward bias means? Forward bias means the first quadrant. Reverse bias means negative voltage, right? Negative voltage, nothing but negative voltage. If you apply, negative current will be flowing in. That means opposite direction of the current. So, the reverse bias will be taken in the third quadrant. Forward bias characteristics will be taken in the first quadrant. So, I am applying the voltage across the junction diode and the current is flowing. So what will be the relationship between the voltage and current? That is derived from the VI characteristics. VI characteristics shows that the relationship between the applied voltage, either forward voltage or reverse voltage, applied forward voltage versus forward current, applied reverse voltage versus reverse current. So forward characteristics we will get it in the first quadrant, reverse characteristics we will get it in the third quadrant, because both are negative. Both negative will be in the third quadrant, both positive will be in the first quadrant. So first quadrant and third quadrant will draw VI characteristics for forward bias and reverse bias. Now I already told up to cut-in voltage the current is 0. Up to cut-in voltage the current is 0. Okay. After cut-in voltage the current linearly increases. That's what is the operation says from the forward bias. And in the reverse bias, what is happening? It is almost 0 or very, very small, of the order of microamperes or nanoamperes. So this already the forward bias current is keep on increasing. This is everything is in milliamperes. Okay. After barrier potential has crossed, then it is increasing. For silicon, it is 0.7. Then reverse bias up to some voltage called breakdown voltage. Breakdown nothing but what? Now that depletion region is there. Depletion region for high voltages, what happens? It breaks down, and all the majority and minority charge carriers will cross the junction. Then large amount of current will be flowing at the breakdown. Until that, the reverse saturation current will flow. That reverse saturation current is very, very small, of the order of nanoamperes or microamperes. Reverse current is nanoamperes or microamperes, or very, very small, which is maybe approximately equal to 0. That's why the graph is drawn here as 0. Or accurately, if you see, the graph will be like this. So for germanium, what is that? 0.3. That's why the dotted line is for germanium. The blue color line is for silicon. So silicon, it is going up to 0.7. Whereas germanium, it just crossed 0.3. From there itself, it is increasing. So these two are the graphs. Other one is reverse. The current is say picoamperes or nanoamperes or microamperes. Very, very small. It is small, constant. That's why the line is constant. See, the line is constant. It does not vary. Whereas in forward bias, it is increasing linearly. But whereas in reverse bias, it is almost same, because that is the reverse saturation current. Minority charge carriers are constant. They are fixed in number. Therefore, the current will be constant and it is a line. Okay. So this is what is showing you the VI characteristics graph. Okay. Next, last point topic and last slide almost is temperature dependence. Temperature dependence means this VI characteristics also depends on the temperature. So if reverse saturation current depends upon the temperature, how it depends upon temperature, that we'll see. Reverse saturation current is denoted by I0 or IS. Now, as the temperature increases, what happens is, for every 10 degrees centigrade rise, very, very important point, for every 10 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, reverse saturation current approximately doubles. See, for every 10 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, for example, T is equal to 25 degrees centigrade. What happened? What is that I01? Say I01 is 10 microamperes. Say, okay. Now T is increased to 35 degrees centigrade, 10 degrees. It is increased by 10 degrees. What happens to I, the new value of the reverse saturation current I02? By this statement, reverse saturation current approximately doubles for every 10 degrees centigrade rise in temperature. Now the temperature is increased from 25 to 35. Then what happens to the reverse saturation current? 10 is there. Now what will be the double of that? Doubles nothing but 2 times. So it will become 20 microamperes, doubles. So for every 10 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, it doubles. Now I don't know whether it is 10 degrees or 1 degrees or 25 degrees or whatever it may be. General formula for two different temperatures, T1 and T2, and two different reverse saturation currents, I01 and I02. How I can calculate I02 for the given value of I01 and the temperatures T1 and T2. This is the formula, very, very important formula. I02 is equal to I01 into 2 power of T2 minus T1 by 10. I02 is the reverse saturation current at temperature T2. I01 is the reverse saturation current at temperature T1. So I02 is equal to I01 into 2 power of T2 minus T1 by 10. Suppose if it is exactly double, exactly 10 degrees increase, directly you can tell it is double. But sometimes it is 25 degrees centigrade is T1, 30 degrees centigrade is T2. Then we can't exactly say, therefore use this formula to calculate that. Okay. Similarly, it depends upon the forward voltage also. For every 1 degree centigrade of the temperature, the forward voltage also changes, that is decreases. So if temperature increases, what happens is reverse saturation current. What is happening to reverse saturation current? For every 10 degree centigrade rise in temperature, it doubles. I0 is increasing. This is very, very important point. Temperature increases, reverse saturation current increases. Second point is, if temperature increases, then the forward voltage, next point is forward voltage decreases. These two are important parameters which depends on temperature. Temperature increases, reverse saturation current increases. Temperature increases, forward voltage decreases. So how this reverse saturation current increases means for every 10 degrees centigrade it doubles, or for every increase in temperature, the formula can be I02 is equal to I01 into 2 power of T2 minus T1 by 10. But for forward voltage, temperature increases, it decreases by how much? 2.5 millivolts. 2.5 millivolts you have to subtract from the previous value. So for every 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature, we have to reduce by 2.5 millivolts. For example, at T1 is equal to 25 degrees centigrade. The forward voltage is 5 millivolts. 5 millivolts. At T2 of 26 degrees centigrade, 1 degree increase. What happens to the FVF? 1 degree increase. For every 1 degree centigrade increase, forward voltage decreases by 2.5 millivolts. 2.5 millivolts minus 2.5 millivolts will be 2.5 millivolts. Something like that. Okay. Or suppose this may be 1 volt. 1 volt means 1 minus 2.5 millivolts. You have to do it. Okay. So for every 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature, forward voltage decreases by 2.5 millivolts. That is very important thing. Next, some example problems with the formulas that we have seen. At a temperature of 27 degrees centigrade, 27 degrees centigrade temperature is given, 27 degrees centigrade. What is that thermal voltage you have to calculate? Already you know the formula. What is the thermal voltage formula? KT by Q actually, but K and Q values I have substituted. Directly I got T by 11,600. So now what is that formula? I should not substitute T as 27 directly. T is in Kelvin. So 27 plus 273 by 11,600. How much is this one? Use in chat box and type it. Very correct. 0.0258. Okay, 0.025. I will that is volts. 0.0258 is volts. Approximately, I can make it as 0.0258 is volts. I can make it as 25.8 millivolts or approximately 26 millivolts. This is a standard value. HT is equal to 27 degrees centigrade. That is called as room temperature. Room temperature at T is equal to 27 degrees centigrade. Room temperature, that is also nothing but T is equal to 300 Kelvin. Both are same. Okay. So your VT value is 26 millivolts. Now onwards, no need of calculating. Just remember, at room temperature, what is VT means? 26 millivolts. That's all. So at T is equal to 27 degrees centigrade or 300 Kelvin, VT is equal to 26 millivolts. Very good. Next, second problem. a silicon diode. Now you have to see the problem whether the diode is given a silicon diode or germanium diode, because that is also very important for us. Silicon diode is given here. That is one data that is taken from the question. Reverse saturation current is I naught or IS, whatever it may be. That is given as 7.12 nanoamperes. At room temperature it is shown. At room temperature of 27 degrees means T is equal to 27 degrees centigrade, or in Kelvin it is 300 Kelvin. Calculate its forward voltage. Forward voltage is V. V we have to calculate. If it is forward current is supposed to calculate. Forward current means I. Calculates forward current. If it is forward biased with a forward biased voltage is V positive 0.7. Forward voltage is V positive 0.7. Now the formula is I is equal to I naught into e power of V by eta Vt minus 1. Diode current equation, Shockley equation formula. Now I naught is given 7.12 nano. Nano is nothing but how much? 7.12 into 10 to the power of minus 9. Nano means minus 9 into e power of V. V is 0.7. Forward bias, therefore positive I am taking 0.7 by 0.7 by eta. Silicon is given, right? What is the value of eta for silicon? Eta is equal to 2 for silicon, 1 for germanium. So 2 into Vt is how much? Vt directly at room temperature. I need not calculate Kt by Q is T by 11,600. T is equal to 26 millivolts. 26 into 10 to the power of minus 3 milli. Okay, minus 1. So this is what you can calculate and tell in chart box. 7.12 into 10 to the power minus 9 is reverse saturation current. V value is 0.7. Eta is 2. Vt is 11,600. T by 11,600. We got that already as 26 millivolts. Directly I am substituting. And this one value is how much? I'm just waiting for someone to calculate and tell the answer. Over. Anyone is typing? Calculator is must. With this, one example 1.3 is there because time is already over. I will not tell that. The solution is available in the handout. I'll just give you the handout to you. So with this is the last problem. You just type the answer and we'll wind up today's session. So today's topic, as per our plan, it was over. And I will, after this class is over, I will share you the handout also, handout number 1. So I will download the attendance meanwhile. Just you have given the answer in the chat box, any one of you? What is that? 9.72 into, you don't think so? It is like that. Just calculate properly using the calculator. Okay, 7.12 into 10 to the power minus 9 into e power of 0.7 by 2 into 26 into 10 to the power minus 3 means 0.026 minus 1. Exactly correct. 487. 4.997 into 10 to the power of minus 3. Correct. So 4.99 means approximately we can make it as a 5, right? 5. This is 4.99 is 5. 5 into 10 to the power minus 3 amperes. 5 into 10 to the power minus 3 ampere means what? I is equal to 5 milliamperes is the answer.